If you will begin, sir, by giving us your full name and DOC number, please.
Yes, sir. It's Jerome Jay Ersland, and my DOC number is 641006.
And Mr. Ersland, do you solemnly swear or affirm that the statements that you will make to the board today will be the truth?
Yes, I do.
You are here for consideration for a recommendation of commutation to the governor for an Oklahoma County case of murder in the first degree, for which you received life with the possibility of parole. Is that your understanding?
Yes, sir.
There is also a consecutive case that is not before us for carrying drugs into a jail, a 2-year sentence out of Cleveland County, and you understand that as well?
Yes, sir.
And so you understand that should you receive a favorable recommendation and favorable vote, that you would roll over to that consecutive case. Is that your understanding?
Yes, sir. That's what I wanted to do. I was guilty of that charge, so I wasn't going to ask for a commutation on it.
Okay. And by that statement, do you indicate to us that you don't feel that you were guilty of murder in the first degree?
No, sir. I wasn't guilty of that.
Okay. He was not guilty of that. Well, you had a jury trial, as we understand, and you were found guilty of that. Why do you think the jury found you guilty of murder in the first degree?
Well, that was because the judge let the prosecution have 18 witnesses, and he only let me use one. And so my whole defense only lasted 30 minutes. And that's what happened.
I have neglected to introduce or to have you introduce delegates that we have here. Let me have her put the camera on them. And so,
yes.
Tell us who we have here, what their names are, and what their relationship is to you.
Okay, the young lady is Kendall Sykes. She's my attorney from Oklahoma City. And the gentleman is Pastor David Thompson. He's my pastor at my church in Chickasha, and he's known me for more than 20 years.
You didn't get a fair trial, is that it?
No, sir. I wanted to take responsibility for the crime.
You want to take responsibility for the murder of the victim in this case? Is that what you just said?
I want to be responsible for his death because it was my fault that he died.
Well, that's pretty clear about it, but you indicated to us, I thought, I don't want to put words in your mouth, that you did not feel that you were guilty of murder in the first degree, and your explanation, I thought I heard, was that you were not allowed to present witnesses. Did I hear that wrong?
No, sir, you were correct.
So, what are you guilty of?
Well, that would be for you to decide, sir.
No, that actually has already been decided, hasn't it, Mr. Ersland?
The what?
That has already been decided. We are not here. Do you think that we're here to retry that case?
No, sir, not at all. You're here to see if I would be a good risk to put back with society. And
well,
so,
would you imagine that some of our judgment about that might have to do with taking responsibility, some old-fashioned notions of atonement and redemption and that sort of thing? Would you imagine that that would be part of it?
Yes, sir. I've got a statement that I wrote. It's the most important thing.
We're going to let you read that in a minute, but if you'll allow me, I'm trying to understand your position here.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So you're not guilty of the murder. Are you what are you guilty of?
I was guilty of killing an armed robber with a ski mask.
Well, that's not necessarily by definition a crime. So I'm trying to understand what it is that, as a matter of law, that you would be guilty of. Because that sounds like self-defense. Somebody comes in and it has a gun and robs you, that's self-defense, and that's not a crime. So I'm trying to figure out what it is that you are telling us that you're guilty of.
Could I ask you maybe help clear that up?
Sure.
Mr. Ersland, can you hear me?
Yes.
Do
Yes, sir.
do you feel like you're maybe guilty of manslaughter? Your jury was instructed on manslaughter as a lesser included offense. Is it your position that maybe you're
Yes,
guilty
sir.
of manslaughter but not murder? Is that what you're trying to say?
Yes, sir, that's
Okay.
correct.
Okay, but now you remember that your jurors were instructed on the lesser included offense of manslaughter, correct?
Okay, I wasn't aware of that. I
Okay.
only saw that first degree and second degree murder, but I could have missed it.
Am I not correct? I thought they were
That's
instructed.
what, yes, that's our understanding.
But your position is, I think maybe you're a little confused. You feel like maybe if you're guilty of something, it's manslaughter, but not premeditated murder.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Is it true, Mr. Ersland, that after the initial encounter with these two armed robbers, that you shot one of them, the one that ultimately died, shot at the others, returned to your shop, got another gun, a second gun, and that's the gun that ultimately you emptied into the guy on the floor? Is that the chain of events?
Yes, sir. What happened is I came back in the store and I thought the man on the floor was dead, so I went to dial 911, and as I did that, I heard a noise and I saw his arm knocked over 2 rows of men's support hose on the bottom 2 rows, and then I pulled a Kel-Tec gun out of my pocket and I fired. And that's how come that I went ahead and had to shoot him. I thought he was reaching for a gun. He had a backpack on, and I thought he was reaching for a gun, and his backpack were on the floor, because I couldn't see that there would be a guy coming in with a ski mask to rob a pharmacy that wouldn't be armed. And I thought for sure he had another weapon there, and that's what happened.
Did you have, we understand that there's a videotape of what happened. Did you ever see that?
Yes, sir. I saw one version of it.
What, when you say one version, was it fake news? What's?
No, sir. No, it was just incomplete. It didn't show the man on the floor, or was showing his arm moving and knocking over the support hose. The cameras didn't catch it, and that was what messed it up for me.
Another thing that is considered here in normal course, if you will, in a commutation is what has happened since somebody has been convicted in the penitentiary. Tell us, you got a consecutive case, you got convicted again in 2013, isn't that true?
I actually pled guilty to having 2 pain patches in my possession for my back pain.
Well, my question to you, Mr. Ersland, is weren't you guilty of having a drug in the jail when you weren't supposed to have it?
Yes, sir, I was guilty.
Okay. Is it hard to say that?
No, sir, it's the way it was. It was a bad mistake on my part.
What is it then that has happened since you have been in the penitentiary that would commend you to us for us to make this recommendation to the governor that there be some form of commutation of the murder in the first degree?
Yes, sir. when I first came into prison, my first year I was in general population, and I got involved helping the inmates. We had a bunch of guys that were illiterate, and so I wrote letters for them, and I answered when their family wrote to them. I would read them the letters, and then I would help them fill out their canteen list, and I would help with their sick call slips, and I taught a reading class every Monday night. And also, I was the operations officer for the Incarcerated Veterans of America. And after that, I was put into protected custody, and so I've been in protected custody for the past 6 years. And so I haven't been able to help anyone.
I was going to actually not start with this, but I think I will in light of the back and forth that you just had with Jerome. Jerome has notable cognitive deficiencies that are characteristic of those who have Asperger's or who are on the autism spectrum. And certainly that just means that he processes information, and communication is much more difficult for somebody like Jerome. And I know that he means no disrespect to this board in attempting to answer the questions plainly. This board has the power to commute any sentence that is excessive or unjust under the circumstances. And it's my belief that this is one of those cases. I mean, I represent a 66-year-old grandfather who has significant deteriorating health. And these are issues that are not going to be getting better. He has a degenerative back condition for which he did have back surgery the month prior to the armed robbery at the pharmacy. He also has diabetes now and complex vision, impairment issues, and these are going to be significant and ongoing medical costs to the state of Oklahoma. I mentioned the notable cognitive deficiencies because also to explain some of his communication and processing issues. The fact that he's in solitary confinement 23 hours a day for the last 6 years seems particularly cruel just because of the way that he processes his current circumstance. He has been incarcerated for 7 years, or as Jerome would say, 2,540 days. I know that number because he writes it on every single letter updating the days that he has spent. I also know that he's incredibly remorseful for the death of Antoine Parker, who was a 16-year-old man who nobody, or young man, who nobody believes deserved to die. The question was posed yesterday about whether or not Jerome is a threat to society, and I think that the answer is clearly absolutely not. One of the best indicators of that, I would submit, is that prior to May 19, 2009, he had lived a good and decent life. He was hardworking. He is a member of the military. He served honorably and was discharged as a lieutenant colonel. And he has numerous service commendations in that regard. And then also that up until the robbery at the Reliable Pharmacy, he had no criminal record. And the events that were set in motion that day were not of his design. And I think that's a particular fact of this case that is a little different than a lot of other cases that I've, in my experience as a lawyer, have been a part of. And certainly it kind of complicated, I think, the issues for a lot of people, because on that day, he got up and went to work, and he was not a vigilante. He was a pharmacist that just went to work to do his job.
Do you know, Mr. Ersland, how old are you?
I'm 66 years old.
Do you know how old you would be under the current sentence when you became eligible for parole consideration?
Yes, sir, I would be over 100 years old. Actually, for parole, I would be 98 years old, and if I served out my entire sentence, I would be over 100.
Mr.
So
Chairman,
I don't have a chance to serve out my time. So that's what makes this hearing so important to me, because it determines where I'll spend the rest of my life.
Mr. Ersland, how would you spend the rest of your life should you be granted commutation?
Yes, sir. Here's my plan. What I was going to do is I get out and go back to my hometown of Chickasha, and see, I've got military retirement, but they don't pay me while I'm in prison. But as soon as I get out, I get my military retirement. And also, I'm 66 years old, and I worked for 43 years, and I've built up a lot of Social Security. So I'll get a Social Security check each month, and the military check each month, and I won't be any burden to the state at all. So my plan is to help Reverend Thompson there, the pastor that's with you now, to help him in church work. And also, I want to go back to my volunteer work where I was worked at the food pantry, where we gave food to disadvantaged people. Pastor Thompson's also ahead of that.
Sounds like you're giving it a lot of thought. Mr. Ersland, let me hear from you directly and not from your attorney. Are you remorseful for the death of Mr. Parker? Are you sorry? Are you sorry for the death of this young man?
Yes, I think about that every day. I hate it so bad that I made the bad decision.
And Pastor,
I'm responsible for his death, and it's hard on me because I always wanted to help people, and then this was the opposite of helping people. It was killing a man. So it was just a terrible thing.
sir,
I wish I could go back and not do it.
Mr. Ersland, you're excused. Thank you for being here. Check back with your case manager. Good luck.
Thank you very much, sirs. I appreciate your time.
Yes, sir.
God bless you.
I believe that he should serve time in prison. I do not believe that he's a danger in society, nor do I believe that he should die in prison. I'm voting yes to a commutation of 15 years. My recommendation is the 7 years he has served plus an additional 8 years.
Robbie Fullerton,
Yes, commute to 15 years.
Brett Macy,
No.
Tom Gillert,
No.
Alan McCall.
No, ma'am.
Commutation is denied.
Thank you for being here.